Hey there, it's BoardGameDave. Today we're taking a look at a Kickstarter game that just came out this year. It's called Earth. And just like the planet that it's named after, it seems to be gaining all kinds of hotness, at least in some part due to what we in the biz call the Dice Tower effect. So about 2 months ago, the Dice Tower did a group review of Earth in which they gave the game an average score of 9.375 out of 10. Obviously that got people buzzing and lots of people online are raving about this game. So what's this game all about? Well, Earth is a competitive game for 1 to 5 players in which you'll strategically grow your ecosystem card engine with unique flora, fauna, and terrain. So a few weeks ago, I got a chance to play a real copy. This is Tarji. My friend got his Kickstarter in, so I got to play it in person, and then I've been playing it on Board Game Arena ever since, and I wanted to share my first impressions with all of you as somebody who was very skeptical about this game going into it. So I'm not typically somebody who gets really into the hyped games or the big Kickstarter games out there. People were also comparing this game a lot to Terraforming Mars and Ark Nova, which wasn't doing it any favors since I feel like both of those games are a little bit too long for what they are. And even the art and components, seemed fine, but nothing too special. And then the gameplay, even from watching the rules overview, it seemed kind of forgettable and kind of average. But like I said, my friend got his copy in, so I went on BGG to get a closer look at this game, and I was pleasantly surprised by the relatively low playtime and relatively low complexity. 2.93 out of 5 is not that bad. So the 4 of us got together and we watched Paul Grogan's How to Play video, which I highly recommend. It was only 20 minutes long. And then after that, we jumped right into the game and we were done within an hour and a half, and none of us had played before, which I thought that was fantastic. It's quick, it's breezy, it's easy to learn. It was fantastic. This game is not that complex. Actually, in fact, I'm going to give you a quick 2-minute overview of how this game plays so you kind of understand the mechanics behind this game. All right, so here I am in the middle of a game on Board Game Arena. Now, on each turn, the active player is going to choose one of 4 actions, and you'll see them right here, okay? And then everybody else is going to get a weaker version of that same action. This is seen in games like Puerto Rico or Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, which was the sequel to Terraforming Mars. Anyway, so there's 4 actions the active player can choose. You can plant, which means you're going to play 2 cards by paying their dirt cost, which is right here, right? So you pay the dirt to play those cards into your tableau. So the active player gets to play 2, and then they draw 4 cards and choose one of those to keep. Everybody else gets to play 1 card and draw 1 card, okay? So strong action and then weaker action, right? You could also compost, right? By doing that, you get 5 dirt, and you get to take 2 cards from the deck and put them into your compost. Your compost pile you're going to use to activate various actions on your cards. Everybody else gets 2 dirt or compost 2 cards from the deck. Over here, you can water, which means getting 6 sprout cubes. These look like this, and each one's 1 point, and you spend them again to do various actions or things like that. So 6 sprouts and 2 dirt. Everybody else gets 2 sprout cubes or 2 dirt. And finally, you can grow, which is active player draws 4 cards and gets 2 growth cylinders, tokens. That's these things right here. So this brown number tells you how many you can kind of place on the card, and if you get that number, 5, you get 6 points. Otherwise, there's just 1 point per segment. So anyways, that's the growing action, which again is drawing 4 cards and getting 2 growth. Everybody else can draw 2 cards or get 2 growth. So that's the 4 actions. That's really, really straightforward. The icons are super clear. Now, after everybody's taken this action, right, the strong one or the weak one, everybody then is going to look for corresponding colored cards in their tableau and activate all of them. So let's say that I had taken this light blue action, right? We're all going to look at the blue cards, light blue cards in our tableau and activate them. So I've got +1 sprout, +1 sprout, and +1 growth. That's pretty awesome, right? But the order that you resolve it is really interesting. So you're going to look at your tableau and you have to go from left to right, top to bottom. And that's very, very important. So I start here, I get my sprout, I get my sprout, I get my growth. Sometimes it doesn't really matter, but for other cards, it does matter because you're spending something here, gaining something there, spending something there, so on and so forth. So that's the way it goes. The game ends when somebody completes their tableau, which is a 16 card 4x4 grid, and then you get some end game scoring. Along the way, we have objectives, our own private objectives, as well as some, cumulative, communal objectives. And there are also these 4 things that you want to pull off, achievements as it were. And kind of like Wingspan, the first person to achieve it gets the most points, everybody else gets fewer points. So there's that as well. And that's pretty much all you need to know to play Earth. That should get you started at least. So that was a pretty quick overview of how this game plays, but I hope you feel like you understand like 95% of the game and how it works. So now we can move on to the pros and the cons of this game. And I did write down a whole bunch of pros here. First of all, there's very little downtime, right? You are always doing something on someone else's turn. So they pick the action and then everybody gets to take the similar action and then activate all their cards, and you're all kind of heads down working on your own thing. It's great. Very little downtime. I love that follow mechanism. Every game I've played that has it is really fun because you're invested in every single player's turns. Something else that's really fun is those card combos, right? You might have this kind of card engine thing where you're spending a sprout to get 2 growth, and then you spend a growth here to get some compost, and then you spend your compost to draw 2 cards here, and then you know, discard 2 cards from your hand to draw 3 more cards, and then every time someone picks that action, boom, 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 all these cards are firing off. It's really satisfying. The way that the cards activate in that specific order is actually really helpful because it narrows down possibilities for analysis paralysis. You're not sitting there thinking, what's the most efficient order to activate this stuff? You don't have to worry about it. Just left to right, top to bottom. Now, sometimes it's not super ideal, but it does help keep the game fast because you just, again, activate your cards in a specific order. Another thing that's great about this game is that it's fairly intuitive and easy to teach. So maybe you start with these 4 actions that you can choose and then go over some of those icons on the cards. And what's great is that the player boards come with this icon reference sheet, which is basically like a player aid, super helpful for new players. And what's really good for new players as well is that there's a lot of flexibility in this game. For example, if a card lets you get a sprout, you can put it anywhere you want, right? Same with the growth tokens. You just plop it down on an empty space. Easy come, easy go. You don't have to worry too much about where things go unless you have a card that says like, I don't know, +1 point for each growth token in this column or something. You just plop them down, pull them off, no big deal. And speaking of flexibility, I love that there's this anytime action here where you can discard 3 of those sprout cubes to get 2 dirt. So if you're struggling to get your dirt engine going and you can't afford to plant cards, you just remove some cubes, no big deal, it's great. Also, there's a very good amount of player interaction. Of course, every time you choose the actions, you're letting everybody else take those same actions, so you're paying attention to what everybody else is doing, what kind of engines they have going on, but also these fauna cards, right, those achievements, you're racing toward them, so you're looking around thinking, ooh, is anybody close to getting 6+ blue abilities? Because I'm trying to, you know, sneak in there and grab that 15 points. That leads to a lot of tension, and also kind of like trying to max out those endgame objectives is really interesting. And one thing I didn't really point out is that at the beginning of the game, each player gets their own unique ecosystem and some climate card, I guess. Each one has its own either like special ability or endgame objective or kind of like passive thing that happens. So everyone's playing a slightly asynchronous game, not to mention, of course, you each have your own personal objective thing that you're going to score for. So you're not all doing the same thing. You're kind of focusing on different strategies and things, and I really, really love that. As much as it's kind of solitary when you're, triggering all your effects, there is a lot of player interaction going on at the same time. And finally, one small thing that I appreciate about this game is that each of the 364 cards has its own unique flavor text, like the beefsteak fungus or the oleander, so you can kind of learn things about these plants and flora as you play the game. And I always really appreciate when a game, you feel like you learn something throughout the course of the game. All right, enough with the pros, let's talk about some of the cons, starting with the most noticeable to me at first. There's really nothing super unique going on here. I think you'd be very hard pressed to find anything in this game that hasn't been used in other games. It's kind of just this big pooling mishmash of a lot of popular games, a little Wingspan, a little Arc Nova, a little Terraforming Mars, just blended together. So there's really nothing I can point to and say, oh, this game does that thing really uniquely or in a special way. It's a lot of familiar mechanisms in one package. Next, the art and components. So while everything, of course, is very lovely, and I like these little trees that you're growing in your tableau, the components themselves are, not super exciting, of course. There's the Kickstarter version, which has the wonderful sprout cubes and the dirt, kind of wooden dirt, meeples resource tokens, and things like that. I guess this is the retail version. Here's cardboard dirt and sprouts and player, tokens. So, the components are okay. They're not anything super crazy. And of course, the art on these cards is photography. So if you like that, then that's great. I know some people don't like photography as card art. So just something to be aware of. There's nothing super next level about the components, I would say. Also, luck of the draw is a bit of a factor in this game. If there's an objective that scores for lots of bushes and you're just not drawing any bush cards, that can feel kind of unfair. Of course, maybe you can mitigate that with a big card drawing engine, but still, luck of the draw is going to be a factor in a game like this. Next, while I did say that this game generally avoids analysis paralysis moments and the game is pretty quick and breezy, once you start looking at all the objectives and all the different achievements you're going for, you can get bogged down sometimes with some tricky decision making. You need to get your trees in a diagonally adjacent pattern, but your bush has to be adjacent to as many things as you can, but you're scoring for sprouts in a certain column and you're planting vines in a certain row. That does get a little bit tricky. So sometimes you're sitting there staring at your tableau like, where am I going to put this card? But beyond that, it does go pretty quick. But from time to time, the game can bog down a little bit while someone's trying to plan out the optimal move. And my final con is that this is definitely a point salad style game. My first game, I scored 183 points, and you're getting points from literally everywhere. So each sprout token is a point. Your growth tokens give you points. Your cards themselves give you points. The compost pile is points. You're going to score for your terrain cards. A lot of them have scoring objectives. Your achievements, there's 4, hopefully you scored in all of them, so those give you points. And then you've got 2 public and 1 private objective that scores you points, and there's other stuff too. So there's a ton of ways to get points. You have no idea who's doing really well, although I guess if your tableau is pretty big, you're doing well. But yeah, there's just, the scoring is wild. It's a big old scoring phase, and some people don't like that whole point salad type of game. But despite all of those cons, Earth is at its core a really, really good game, if not the most original game I've ever played. I do prefer this over Ark Nova and Terra Mystica, Terraforming Mars, because it's shorter. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It comes in, it goes out, it's quick, it's breezy, it's really, really easy to teach new players. It's not overly complicated, everything's very intuitive, and I really appreciate that. Somebody on Instagram asked me if I liked it more than Wingspan, and I had to think about it because I really do love Wingspan. I think that I prefer Earth, which is kind of crazy to me. I didn't expect to say that, but after playing Earth, Wingspan just feels kind of two-dimensional. In Wingspan, each player picks an action and then, runs through their row, and that's it. And you're just watching them take their turn. Unless you have pink abilities, their turn doesn't really impact you at all. So Wingspan is great, of course, but Earth somehow seems even more intuitive, I guess, and there's just so much more kind of directions to choose from. There's also a simpler variant, like a first-time variant, so you could always throw that out there as a simpler option. So Earth is very, very good. I was very pleasantly surprised, and like I said, I've been playing on Board Game Arena, and it's really great on there. The game, the website, of course, really helps you through your turns and kind of reminds you what you need to get done. So it's great. I am on Board Game Arena as just BoardGameDave, no spaces. If you want to friend me on there, of course, we could get a turn-based game of Earth going. I would love to do that with you. So hit me up, send me a friend request, and maybe we can play online. Oh, and before I go, make sure if you haven't already that you subscribe down here to the channel. Next week, I'm going to be reviewing Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion and giving you my honest take on this game. You don't want to miss that. So I will see you next week for the Jaws of the Lion review. Until then, have a wonderful week. Take care and happy gaming. Bye. Cool beans. I think I did it.